All right, here's my review for Jeff Shaara's A Blaze of Glory. I checked this out at my library. Page count in this is 435 pages. Okay, so I talked a bit about my experience reading Jeff Shaara in my recent review, the last review I did for The Killer Angels, which I said forms up a trilogy. Jeff did a prequel called Gods and Generals and then a sequel called The Last Full Measure. Excuse me one second. So I read all three of those, and as I said, I didn't really care for Jeff's books. So I figured, well, why don't I give him another shot? He took about a decade, I think, between those and this book. He wrote a bunch of other stuff, some Revolutionary War novels, and some not Civil War, but World War II novels. And I thought maybe he's gotten better as a writer. I've got no problem giving this guy another chance. And let's just say this will probably be the last novel of his that I read. This was a slog. This really was a slog. It's easily, of the three books of his that I've read, this is the worst. I didn't think it was possible, but I actually think that he's gotten worse, at least from the experience of reading this. I don't know. This was. Let me just show you something here. One of the big problems of this book is right here. It's divided into sections. So the first half of the book is basically maneuvering into position, and it takes forever. The setup takes forever. You actually don't get until about halfway through the novel before things really even start. I believe it was around page 188, I think, is where the fighting actually kicks in, and you are well into the novel by then. So it just takes way too long to get the ball rolling. So yeah, here's part 3. So basically all this part, if you look at the book, okay, if you straight down the middle almost, all of this is pre-battle setup. Armies marching through the mud, scouting, all this stuff, which I think, some people maybe find that interesting. I didn't. It's just, there's too much. There's just too much going on. Again, he's trying to do too much, which I think is a problem with him. It ends up being scattershot. So, for instance, one of the principal characters in the novel for the Union side is Sherman. He spends a lot of time talking about Sherman, setting Sherman up, Sherman's perspective, and then once the battle starts, Sherman almost disappears. I mean, it makes no sense. Albert Sidney Johnston, General Albert Sidney Johnston, those chapters I actually enjoyed. I will say the chapters from his perspective I thought were really good. I enjoyed them. I think they were the best parts of the novel. Unfortunately, everybody knows Albert Sidney Johnston died on the first day of the fighting. So essentially, he drops out of the novel and he's gone. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's 2 chapters in the entire novel from General Grant's perspective. I mean, 2 chapters from General Grant. That's it. I don't know what is happening here. It doesn't make any sense to me. He invents some fictional characters. For instance, this James Seeley, who is a member of Forest Cavalry. And he spends like 2 or 3 chapters towards the beginning of the book. And then Seeley disappears until very late. I mean, he reappears, but then you have this Union guy named Dutchy Bauer, who we spend time with. And Look, Shelby Foote used fictional characters in Shiloh, which I recently reviewed, and that book is almost half as long as this. This is twice as long as that. I don't know, man. It's just, I hate being harsh. I hate being, critical, but this could have used an editor. This book did not need to be as long as it is. There just seems to be a lot of filler, and I don't know why this is overdrawn and so stretched out. I cannot recommend it unless you're like a hardcore Civil War buff and is just a glutton for punishment. Let me read to the reader. I want to read his intro to this novel. And this was a warning shot to me right off the bat when I read it. So he says here, to the reader, this is the first of a trilogy that explores the mostly overlooked stories of the Civil War that take place west of the Appalachian Mountains, which is usually referred to as War in the West. This trilogy will focus on 3 pivotal events: the Battle of Shiloh, the Siege of Vicksburg, and the final chapter of the war in Georgia and the Carolinas. If you've read any of my books, you know that these stories are driven not by events but by characters. For me, the points of view of the characters in the story are more appealing than the blow-by-blow facts and figures that are necessarily products of history textbooks. For that reason, I try to find those specific characters who pull me into the story, whose actions affects the history of the event, and whose point of view will, I hope, bring that story to you in a way you find most intriguing and more professional than what you might have read in high school. The primary voices in this book include historical figures unique to the story, and others who will remain significant throughout the entire trilogy. Some are well known: William T. Sherman, Albert Sidney Johnston, Nathan Bedford Forrest, Ulysses Grant, among the cast that will eventually include most of the major participants in the war that engulfs the South, from the Mississippi River to the Carolinas. Other characters you will not know at all. In the Civil War trilogy, begun by my father with the Killer Angels, you got to do a name drop there, right? To remind you how awesome that book is. Whew! He says, and through my own bookends to his classic work, Gods and Generals and The Last Full Measure, the voices came from the top, the generals. As my own work spread out to include World War I and II, I realized that generals do not always tell the best story, and certainly not the whole story. For that reason, this series will also focus on the points of view of the men who we will now call grunts. The search for voices can be challenging and fun, and my choice of characters will be both obvious and questionable. I receive an enormous amount of email asking me why some particular person is overlooked or ignored altogether. I certainly mean no disrespect to anyone who played a pivotal role in any of these extraordinary chapters of our history, but my goal is not to offer a complete detailed history of the event. If that's what you seek, then by all means read Shelby Foote. I think I will. Jeff. I think I will. Or Jim McPherson. Whew, boy. This book is to be described as a novel because there is dialogue, and you are often inside the thoughts of these characters, but I recognize and accept the risk that you might not agree with my interpretations. That's as it should be. My research is painstaking and voluminous, and I rely exclusively on original sources, in other words, the accounts of the people who were there. I make a strenuous effort to be historically accurate, to get the facts straight. I hope that when all is said and done, you will accept what I'm trying to offer you is a good story. It's not. I don't know how you managed to make the Civil War boring, but you did, sir. I hope you will come to appreciate the diverse cast whose points of view will carry through one of the most important, dramatic, and horrific chapters of the Civil War, the Battle of Shiloh. Jeff Shaara, April 2012. Remember old Siskel and Ebert, their movie reviews? Well, buddy, this is a thumbs down for me. Hard pass. Forget this novel. unless you're a glutton for punishment. Read Shiloh by Shelby Foote. This thing, tedious. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll have something else. I'm going to change it up. Maybe do a sci-fi review or something. Have a wonderful day.